This is my Yamaha R1, 2009, preferably tuned by Boss Racing. So what I did was I pulled the air intake off, right? They're right here. These, you gotta pull these off. But first, to get to that, you gotta pull this off first to get to this. So this is first, this comes off second, and then this comes off third. This guy sits right here. It sits right here next to, you see where the tank is? It sits right here. Once you pull all of this stuff off, this is the bottom piece of the fairings. This sits at the bottom of the motorcycle. As you can see here, it's held in by 4 screws. 2 right here and 2 right here. Once you pull the whole body off of the bike, what you're gonna have to do is, you're gonna have to come over here. This guy has to come off. First, you gotta pull this off right here. This guy comes off like that. It's a little plastic rubber mount that sits inside the reservoir tank. Sorry if my English ain't too good. There's 2 screws. There's one right here, 10 millimeter, see? And then there's another one in here. There's another one here, right? Just adjusting my thing over here. I'm gonna pull this off so you can see. But I only lifted up the tank because the thermostat, which is here, there's clamps. You see these clamps right here? There's 2 right here. And then there's another 2 back there that once you lift up the tank, it should be right here. Right under the tank right here, there's 2 clamps that sit like right up here in the middle that you have to pull off. And what I used was a Phillips. I don't know if it's gonna, let me see. There you go. I used a Phillips screwdriver, right? And then you just pull the clamps, not completely, but just loosen them up. Just loosen up the clamps because you need to make space for this stuff to come off. Because the starter is back here. It's behind the thermostat. So yeah, you gotta pull these off. I'm recording on one hand and then I'm doing the video on the other, so bear with me here. All right, there goes one. Right here, it's easy. There's no way I was gonna do it with the air intake and the other stuff up there. It's too much. It's too much work. All right, 10 millimeter screws. Pull this out of the way. Now, you see this thermostat? Once you loosen up these 2, this will come loose. It comes off, right? This comes off. The starter is back there. Once this comes off right here, once you pull this off right here, which is the thermostat, there's gonna be coolant in it, so be careful. Even after you drain the coolant, there's gonna be some inside the coolant line here. It's gonna start dripping. So what I did was, I have the rag right here, as you can see. Just hold it right here, like that. Pull these 2 off. Pull the other 2 clamps that's hiding in the tank. Once you lift up the tank, there's gonna be a hole in here. So you should be able to get it in here. There's 2 little spots right here that you can just go in there, pull it off. And then the starter is back there, right? The starter, which is this used one that I have here, it has these 2 bolts. There's one right here, and there's another one right here. You pull these 2, and then here, this is where the ground cable sits at. This is a 10 millimeter screw, by the way, which is the same one I used, right? Which is right here, the 10 millimeter. The same one that you use to remove the reservoir, you have to use to remove the starter bolts, right? They sit, look, this is the reservoir screws, right? Watch how they fit inside the starter. See? See? It's the same kind of screw that's inside to hold the starter, right? Once you unbolt these two, again, you have to pull the other one off too. Up the other one at the top right here. So three bolts, pretty much. After you remove this guy right here, the starter will just slide right out. At least this should just pull right out. If it doesn't, just wiggle it around a little bit like that. And it'll be right off. It should be coming right off. So it's a lot easier than having to take this off, air intake, and then you got to take the, what is it, the throttle body off. There's a bunch of stuff up there. You can do it through this little inlet right here. There's just the coolant that you have to drain, which I'm going to show you the coolant drain plug, right? It's this little guy right here. Where my finger is, right here. This little hole right here with the clamp, right here. This is where the coolant comes out of. And then if you want to ever drain your oil too, it's down here. Right here where the casing is, the motor casing. So it's going to be right here. This is for the oil. Just for future references, right? So you just pull this off, and then this guy, which is the oil filter, it sits in here. But you got to do it through the right side of the bike, the other side, to get this oil filter off. It's very snug in there. But yeah, you got to make sure you drain the coolant first. If you don't drain the coolant, as soon as you pull this thermostat, right here, it's just going to start spilling everywhere. So that's the first thing I did, right? Which, as you can see here, I'm going to come back here. There's an open area here. As you can see, this guy, it comes off. Don't start the bike prior to doing this or anything. Just leave the bike shut off. You know what I mean? The first thing you should be doing right now is undressing the bike if you're planning on doing this yourself. You got to get used to most of the stuff that comes off. It gets back on there pretty easily, but the hardest part is making sure that you get that starter out of the way. You see, I have everything here, and I also want to make mention, you want to make sure you leave the bolts the way they would sit on the bike. So when you pull it off, make sure it's there. That's a case to mention. This one too. See, I leave the bolts on there. Like that. When I put them back, see there's little tabs down here. This one was a pain in the ass to pull off. Those little tabs on the bottom, they sit right here. You see this little guy right here? The tabs go inwards. From here, it holds that air intake in there. Once you pull that air intake off, everything else is straightforward. Yeah, like I said though, this guy has to come off first. If you don't know where it is, if you don't know where to find this guy right here, there is usually this guy right here that sits in front of it. This is the case that sits in front of, like that. It has the bolts right there too. This guy sits in front of it. Yeah, I'm just gonna show it to you. It sits like this, so you kind of don't see where it is. But once you pull the cover, the reservoir has to get emptied. Again, there's two 10mm screws that holds the reservoir in. So once you remove that, you want to make sure that you drain out that coolant, because I actually found some dirt inside the reservoir. It was pretty dirty, so I had to clean it out. I used distilled water and vinegar to see if I could get it out. It looks pretty good now. But this guy comes off first. There's two screws, right? There's one here, and there's another one here. This is before you drain your coolant, by the way, all right? You pull this off. This little guy is gonna sit snug. Just move it out the way like that. And then this guy has come off. Once you pull this guy off, you have incredible access to the starter. I will show you the image in a few seconds here. Yeah, this guy is important. This is the thermostat, so you got to be very careful with it. And make sure it's snug. Make sure it's very snug, because if anything leaks out, It's gonna give you a pain in the ass with trouble. But pull this out, and then the starter, you can see it. Look at that motherfucker in here, right here. See it? That's the starter right there. Once you pull this out, you'll have a ton of room to wiggle that stuff out. It's relatively easy. It took me a day because I didn't get my starter until today. It was ordered yesterday. But it took me about 20 minutes to remove all of the fairings, which is basically the air intake right here, the middle fairings back here, and then the bottom piece. About 20 minutes to remove both sides, and then, yeah. The starter that I'm using, by the way, it's called Niche starter motor. I didn't go with Rick's electric motor because I heard Rick's electric starter motor, you need to fix the ground cable because it's slightly bigger. This one is OEM fitment, so you shouldn't have any problem putting it back on together. It looks the same as this one here that I pulled out. Yeah, this guy is blacked out. There's no way this thing is starting up. Yeah, it doesn't even want to move, like it's frozen into place. Yeah, any questions, contact me on Facebook. I will be glad to help you out.